My family forced me to raise my drug-addicted brother's abandoned baby, and 4 years later, I lost my job and my relationship because of it. When he finally got clean, he took the baby away by force. Now they call me selfish for not fighting to keep him, but I told them, I sacrificed everything for a child who wasn't even mine. Now my brother has realized the reality of raising a child and is begging me to take the baby back, but I'm done with everything. I'm sitting in my apartment right now, staring at the overdue bills on my coffee table, and I honestly don't know whether to laugh or cry. My phone has been buzzing nonstop for 3 days with calls from my mom, my dad, my Aunt Linda, and yes, my piece of crap brother Landon. They're all calling me heartless, selfish, cruel. But you know what? I'm finally okay with being called those things. Let me back up and tell you how I got here, because this mess has been 4 years in the making. I'm Lily, 29F, and up until 4 years ago, I thought I had my life pretty well figured out. I was working as a graphic designer at a mid-sized marketing firm in Portland, making decent money, $52,000, which felt like a fortune to me then, and I'd been dating this amazing guy Peter for about 2 years. We were talking about moving in together, maybe getting engaged. I had my own little one-bedroom apartment that I decorated exactly how I wanted it, a small but growing savings account, and honestly, I was happy. My brother Landon is 3 years younger than me, and he's been the family mess-up since high school. Started with the Zaza, moved on to pills, eventually landed on heroin. By the time he was 22, he'd been in and out of rehab 4 times, stolen money from all of us more times than I can count, and generally made every family gathering a nightmare of walking on eggshells and pretending everything was fine. But here's the thing about families like mine, we're close. That's what my mom always says. We stick together no matter what. Which really means we enable Landon's bullcrap and pretend it's love. Anyway, when Landon was 24, he knocked up this girl Jess. She was sweet, maybe a little naive, but she genuinely seemed to care about him. She got clean when she found out she was pregnant, went to all her appointments, really tried to do right by the baby. Landon, meanwhile, kept using and kept promising he'd get clean soon. Little Ethan was born in February 2021, healthy and perfect. For about 6 months, things seemed stable. Jess was handling most of the childcare while Landon worked construction jobs sporadically. I'd visit sometimes, bring groceries or baby stuff. Ethan was this chunky, happy baby who always reached for me when I held him. I loved that kid from day one, which should have been my first warning sign. Then Jess's postpartum depression got really bad, and instead of getting her help, Landon decided the solution was to start using again to cope with the stress. By the time Ethan was 8 months old, both of them were using heavily. The apartment was a disaster. I'd find Ethan in dirty diapers that hadn't been changed in hours, crying in his crib while his parents were passed out on the couch. I started staying over more, basically doing all the childcare whenever I wasn't at work. Peter was understanding at first, he knew my family situation was complicated. But I could see him getting frustrated when our weekend plans kept getting cancelled because I had to go check on the baby. The breaking point came when Ethan was 10 months old. I got a call from Jess, sobbing, saying Landon had overdosed and was in the hospital. When I got to their apartment, Jess was high out of her mind and Ethan was screaming in his crib, wearing the same diaper from when I'd left him the day before. The apartment reeked of smoke and something rotten. There were needles on the coffee table. I packed up Ethan and all his stuff and took him home with me that night. I told myself it was temporary, just until Landon got out of the hospital and they could get their crap together. That was December 2021. Landon got out of the hospital after 3 days, went straight back to using, and Jess disappeared entirely. Just gone. Didn't even say goodbye to her baby. And that's when my family stepped in with their brilliant solution. "Lily, you're so good with him," my mom said, sitting in my living room while Ethan played with blocks on my carpet. "And you have a stable job, a nice place. It's just temporary until Landon gets clean. You can't just let him go into the system," my dad added. "He's family. Think about what's best for Ethan," Aunt Linda chimed in. "He knows you. He loves you. You're like his mother already." Here's where I should have asked the obvious question, why couldn't they take him? But I was 25, overwhelmed, and they made it sound like I was the only viable option. My parents claimed they were too old and set in their ways to start over with a baby. They were 54 and 56. Aunt Linda had her own 2 teenagers and a messy divorce to deal with. Everyone had reasons why they couldn't step up, but somehow I was selfish if I didn't sacrifice my entire life plan. The guilt trip was relentless. Every conversation became about how I was the only one who could save this baby, how I was his only hope, how the foster care system would destroy him. When I tried to point out that I was young, single, and had never planned on having kids this young, they made it sound like I was being heartless. "This is what family does," my mom kept saying. "We take care of each other." Peter tried to be supportive, but the strain was immediate and obvious. We'd gone from talking about our future together to me suddenly being a full-time mom to a toddler. Our relationship became scheduling dates around nap time, dealing with tantrums interrupting our conversations, and me being exhausted all the time. Meanwhile, Landon would show up sporadically, usually when he needed money. He'd play with Ethan for 20 minutes, promise he was getting clean next week, and then disappear for weeks at a time. But whenever I suggested maybe we should look into making the custody arrangement official, or getting child support, or literally anything that might hold him accountable, my family would freak out. "You can't involve the courts," my mom would say. "That would destroy any chance of Landon getting better. He needs to know his son is safe so he can focus on recovery." So I was stuck in this weird limbo where I had all the responsibility of being Ethan's parent, but none of the legal rights or recognition. I was essentially a long-term babysitter with no official standing. I got him enrolled in daycare by listing myself as his emergency contact and aunt, but anything medical or official required tracking down Landon. The first major breaking point came in spring 2022. Ethan, who was about 15 months old then, got really sick with a respiratory infection. I took him to urgent care, and since I'd been bringing him to all his appointments and was listed as his emergency contact, they treated him. But when his condition worsened and they wanted to do more extensive tests, they needed his legal guardian's consent. I couldn't reach Landon for 6 hours. 6 hours of sitting in a hospital room with a sick baby, calling my brother over and over while he was probably passed out somewhere. When I finally got hold of him, he showed up high. The medical staff could tell immediately, but they still had to get his consent for treatment. It was humiliating and terrifying. That night, Peter and I had our biggest fight yet. "This can't keep going, Lily," he said while I was giving Ethan a breathing treatment at 3 a.m. "You're killing yourself, and for what? Your brother doesn't give a crap about this kid." "He's trying to get clean," I said, but even I didn't believe it anymore. "When? It's been over a year of trying. Meanwhile, you haven't slept a full night in months, you're using all your vacation days for doctor appointments, and we haven't had a real conversation that wasn't interrupted by a diaper change in I don't know how long." He wasn't wrong, but what was I supposed to do? Let Ethan suffer because the adults in his life were failures? Peter stuck it out for another 8 months, bless him, but by the end he was basically living with a roommate who happened to share a bed with him occasionally. We barely talked anymore that wasn't about Ethan's schedule or my family drama. Our intimacy life was non-existent. I was either too tired or Ethan was sick or there was some crisis with Landon. Peter finally moved out in October 2022. Not because he didn't love me, he said, but because he felt like he was dating a ghost. The Lily he fell in love with had disappeared under the weight of responsibilities that weren't mine to carry. "I want to be with you," he said while packing his stuff. "Not with someone who's so busy saving everyone else that she's forgotten who she is." Losing Peter broke something in me, but I didn't have time to grieve properly because I had an 18-month-old who needed me. My mom's response when I told her? Well, if Peter really loved you, he would have understood that family comes first. The second major blow came in early 2023. I'd been struggling at work for months. Late arrivals because daycare drop-off took longer than expected, leaving early for sick kid pickups, missing meetings because of Ethan-related emergencies. My boss had been understanding, but there's only so much flexibility any job can offer. The final straw came when I had to leave work early to pick up Ethan from daycare because he'd thrown up, and I missed a crucial client presentation. They were kind about it, gave me a decent severance, but the message was clear: I'd chosen Ethan over my career, and my career lost. Finding a new job while caring for a 2-year-old was a nightmare. Interviews were difficult to schedule around daycare hours. When I did get interviews, I felt like I had to hide the fact that I was essentially a single mom to a child who wasn't legally mine, a situation that was impossible to explain quickly. I finally found a job at a smaller firm for $38,000, a $14,000 pay cut. The benefits were worse, the hours were longer, and the work was mind-numbing, but it was a paycheck. My savings were gone, my credit cards were maxed out, and I was barely keeping my head above water financially. Meanwhile, Landon had started what felt like his 15th attempt at getting clean. This time he was in a longer-term program, 6 months instead of the usual 30-day stints. For the first time in years, I felt hopeful. Maybe this was it. Maybe he'd finally step up and I could get my life back. Ethan was thriving despite everything. He was talking in full sentences, potty-trained, obsessed with dinosaurs and trucks. He called me mama and ran to me when he got hurt. When people saw us together, they assumed he was my son. I'd stopped correcting them because it was easier than explaining the whole mess. But here's the thing about loving a kid who isn't really yours: you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Landon completed the program in August 2023. He looked better than he had in years, was going to meetings, had a sponsor, got a job at a warehouse. My family was over the moon. "See?" my mom said. "I told you this would all work out. Landon is ready to be a father now." But I'd been Ethan's primary caregiver for almost 2 years at that point. As far as Ethan was concerned, I was his mom. Landon was the guy who showed up sometimes with presents and played with him for a few hours before leaving again. I thought we'd transition slowly. Maybe Landon would start taking Ethan for a few hours, then overnight visits, building up to shared custody. I was willing to do whatever was best for Ethan, even though the thought of him leaving broke my heart. That's not what happened. Landon announced at a family dinner in September that he was ready to have his son back. Not co-parent. Not share custody. Take him back, full stop. "I'm his father," he said, like that explained everything. "I'm clean now, I have a job, I found a 2-bedroom apartment. It's time." I tried to explain that Ethan would need time to adjust, that we should do this gradually for his sake. Ethan barely knew Landon as anything other than a visitor. In his mind, I was his parent. "You've done a great job," Landon said, "but he's my kid. I can take it from here." The family was fully on his side. This was what we'd all been working toward, right? Landon was clean, ready to be a dad, and I could finally get back to my own life. Everyone was so happy about this beautiful reunion. Except Ethan. We started with weekend visits. When Landon came to pick him up for his first overnight stay, Ethan had a complete meltdown. We're talking screaming, clinging to me, begging not to go. It was heartbreaking. "He'll adjust," Landon said, peeling Ethan off me while he sobbed. Kids are resilient. But Ethan didn't adjust. Every pickup was a battle. He'd cry for hours beforehand, asking why he had to go to Landon's house when his real home was with me. He started having accidents again, nightmares, became clingy and anxious whenever Landon was mentioned. After 6 weeks of this, I tried talking to my family about slowing down the transition, but they accused me of sabotaging Landon's recovery. "You're confusing him," my mom said. "The more you fight this, the harder it is for everyone." "Maybe you're having trouble letting go," Aunt Linda suggested. "It's natural to get attached, but you have to think about what's best for Ethan." What's best for Ethan? I'd been thinking about what was best for Ethan for 2 years while everyone else thought about what was convenient for them. The breaking point came in November 2023. Landon decided he was done with gradual transitions and wanted full custody immediately. He showed up at my apartment with our dad and announced they were taking Ethan. "This has gone on long enough," my dad said. "Landon is his father. Stop making this harder than it needs to be." Ethan was playing with his trucks in the living room, completely unaware that his world was about to be turned upside down again. He was 2.5 years old. In his memory, I was the person who fed him breakfast every morning, read him bedtime stories, kissed his scraped knees, and tucked him in every night. Landon was the guy who showed up sometimes and took him away to a place that felt scary and unfamiliar. But I had no legal standing. Technically, I'd been babysitting for almost 2 years. I had no rights, no say in what happened to this child I'd raised and loved and sacrificed everything for. "I need more time to prepare him," I said, watching Ethan line up his dinosaurs by size, something I taught him. "This is traumatic for him." "You've had 2 months, Landon said. "I'm not asking permission anymore. Get his stuff." The next hour was one of the worst of my life. Packing up Ethan's clothes, his favorite stuffed dinosaur, his books, while he kept asking why his toys were going in boxes. When I tried to explain that he was going to live with Landon now, he started crying. "I want to stay with Mama," he sobbed, wrapping his arms around my legs. "I don't want to go." Landon literally had to carry him out screaming while I stood in my suddenly too quiet apartment, surrounded by the ghost of the life we'd built together. The toddler bed I'd assembled myself. The height marks on the doorframe tracking his growth. The finger painting stuck to the refrigerator. My family acted like I should be celebrating. I was free. I could date again, focus on my career, travel, do all the things I'd put on hold. Wasn't this what I'd wanted? But they didn't understand that somewhere along the way, being Ethan's mom had stopped feeling like a sacrifice and started feeling like my purpose. Yeah, I'd lost my relationship and struggled with my career, but I'd also experienced this incredible love I'd never known existed. Watching him learn to walk, hearing his first words, seeing his face light up when he figured out how to work a puzzle, that had become my whole world. Now my world was just empty. I threw myself into work, started therapy, tried dating again. People kept telling me how great I looked, how much more relaxed I seemed. But I felt hollow. I'd given everything I had to this little boy for almost 2 years, and then he was just gone. No gradual transition, no shared custody, No recognition of the bond we'd formed. For the first few months, I'd see Ethan occasionally during supervised family visits. He was clearly struggling. He'd gotten quiet and withdrawn, stopped talking as much. When he saw me, he'd run over and cling to me, asking when he could come home. "This is his home now," Landon would say, pulling him away. "He needs to adjust." But Ethan wasn't adjusting. According to my mom, he was having constant tantrums at Landon's place, wasn't sleeping well, kept asking for me. Landon was getting frustrated with how difficult Ethan had become. "He was never like this with Lily," I heard my mom tell my dad on the phone. "Maybe we moved too fast." But instead of considering that maybe a 2-year-old needed more time to adjust to a massive life change, they decided the problem was that I was still interfering by existing in Ethan's life at all. In March 2024, Landon announced that he thought it would be less confusing for Ethan if I stepped back completely for a while. No visits, no calls, nothing. Let Ethan bond with his real parent without the distraction of his former caregiver. I was devastated, but what could I do? I had no legal rights, and my family was convinced this was best for everyone. So I stepped back and tried to rebuild my life from scratch. That's when I finally started putting myself first again. I found a better job that paid $45,000, still less than I'd made originally, but progress. I started saving money again, slowly. I went on dates that didn't end with me rushing home to relieve a babysitter. I took a weekend trip with friends for the first time in years. For over a year, I heard updates through my family. Ethan was doing better, Landon was figuring out parenting, everything was working out great. I tried to be happy about it and move on with my life. Then, 3 weeks ago, my phone rang at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. It was Landon, and he sounded desperate. "Lily? I need your help." I almost hung up, but something in his voice stopped me. "What's wrong?" "It's Ethan. This is so much harder than I thought. He cries every night, he won't eat half the time, and I don't know what to do. Daycare says he's aggressive with other kids. He keeps asking for you." My heart broke and soared at the same time. "Landon, what are you saying?" "I'm saying I messed up. I thought I could just step in and be his dad, but he doesn't see me that way. You raised him. You're his mom in every way that matters, and I took him away from you because I wanted to feel like a real father." For a moment, I felt vindicated. I'd been right about the transition being too fast, right about Ethan needing more time, right about everything my family had dismissed. But then Landon kept talking. "I need you to take him back. Just for a while, until I figure things out. I'm not using or anything, but this is overwhelming. I work 10-hour shifts, and daycare is expensive, and he's so angry all the time. He'd be happier with you." And there it was. Not an apology for traumatizing Ethan. Not a recognition of what I'd sacrificed. Not even an acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, I'd been right about how to handle this. Just another request for me to clean up his mess. "I can't do this again, Landon," I said quietly. "What do you mean? You love him?" "I do love him. But I can't keep being his mom only when it's convenient for you. I rebuilt my life after you took him away. I can't put myself through that again." Landon got angry then, accusing me of abandoning Ethan, of being selfish, of not caring about what was best for him. When I wouldn't budge, he called my parents. That's when the family guilt trip machine started up again, but this time it was different. This time, they were angry that I wasn't jumping at the chance to help. "That poor baby needs you," my mom said. "How can you turn your back on him?" "Where was this concern when you all supported Landon taking him away from me?" I asked. "That was different. Landon is his father. And I'm the person who raised him for 2 years while his father was getting high. I'm the person who sacrificed my relationship, my job, my savings, my entire life plan to keep him safe. And when Landon decided he wanted to play daddy, you all acted like I should be grateful to hand him over." The conversation went in circles. They couldn't understand why I wouldn't just step in and fix things again. In their minds, I was Ethan's backup parent, available whenever the primary option wasn't working out. But here's what I realized during those phone calls: I'm not a babysitter. I'm not a temporary solution to their problems. For almost 2 years, I was Ethan's mom in every way that mattered, and they treated that like it was nothing. When I said no, they called me heartless. When I pointed out that they'd all supported Landon taking Ethan away from me, they said I was being petty. When I mentioned that I'd lost my relationship and struggled with my career because of the situation they'd pressured me into, they said I was making excuses. The final straw came when my mom said, "Well, if you really loved Ethan, you'd do what's best for him regardless of your feelings." "I did that for 2 years," I said. "I loved him enough to sacrifice everything I had. But love isn't supposed to be self-destruction. And Ethan deserves better than adults who treat him like a responsibility to be passed around when it gets inconvenient. I hung up and turned off my phone. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, I've had to change my number because they were calling nonstop. I've had family members show up at my apartment unannounced. My Aunt Linda even tried to guilt-trip me at the grocery store last week, cornering me in the cereal aisle to tell me how disappointed she was in me. But you know what? I'm not backing down this time. I loved Ethan with everything I had. I gave him the best 2 years I could, and I hope that foundation helps him navigate whatever comes next. But I can't keep setting myself on fire to keep other people warm. Landon made his choice when he took Ethan away from me. He wanted to be a father, and now he gets to figure out what that means. My family made their choice when they supported him over me. They don't get to change their minds now that it's hard. I know what some of you are thinking: why didn't I fight for legal custody back then? Honestly, I was young, overwhelmed, and my family convinced me it would hurt Landon's recovery and be bad for Ethan to involve courts. I believed them because I wanted to believe that eventually, we'd all figure out what was best for him together. I was naive. I'm 29 years old now, and I'm finally putting myself first. My current job isn't amazing, but it's stable and pays the bills. I'm slowly building my savings back up. I'm dating someone who respects my boundaries and doesn't see my complicated past as a red flag. For the first time in years, I'm building a life that's mine. I know Ethan is struggling, and that breaks my heart. But the solution isn't for me to swoop in and rescue everyone again. The solution is for Landon to step up and do the hard work of parenting, even when it's difficult. That means getting Ethan therapy to help him process all the transitions he's been through. That means learning how to balance work and childcare. That means making Ethan his priority, not his burden. And if my family wants to be supportive grandparents and aunts and uncles, then they need to support Landon in learning how to parent, not look for someone else to dump the responsibility on. They could offer to babysit occasionally, help with groceries, or contribute to Ethan's therapy costs. But apparently it's easier to guilt-trip me than actually help. I spent 2 years being everyone's solution, and all it got me was heartbreak and resentment. I'm done being their backup plan. Some people might call me selfish for walking away from a child who needs help. But you know what's actually selfish? Expecting someone to sacrifice their entire life for a child, then taking that child away when it's convenient, then expecting them to sacrifice their life again when things get hard. I gave Ethan everything I had when he needed me. Now I'm giving myself the same consideration I gave him for 2 years. I'm putting my needs first, and I'm not apologizing for it. My family thinks I'm being cruel, but I think I'm finally being kind to myself. And maybe, just maybe, by refusing to enable this cycle of dysfunction, I'm being kind to Ethan too. He deserves adults who are committed to him for the long haul, not people who treat parenting like a relay race. I hope Landon figures it out. I hope Ethan gets the stable, loving home he deserves. But it's not going to be with me, and I'm finally okay with that. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away and let people face the consequences of their choices. It's taken me 4 years to learn that lesson, but I'm finally there. So to my family, if you're reading this, I'm done. Find another solution because I'm not it. Update, added 2 hours later. A few people ask what I think will happen to Ethan. Honestly, I don't know. Part of me hopes Landon will step up and become the father Ethan needs. Part of me worries he'll find another family member to dump him on. But that's not my problem to solve anymore. Someone asked if I'd consider taking Ethan if Landon went back to using. The answer is no. I know that sounds harsh, but I can't be the person who swoops in every time Landon fails. If that happens, there are legal systems in place to protect children. I'd support those processes, but I wouldn't put myself back in the position of being a temporary guardian with no rights. For those saying I'm selfish, you're entitled to your opinion. But I spent 2 years putting a child's needs above my own, and I lost almost everything that mattered to me. Now I'm trying to rebuild, and I won't apologize for protecting myself from people who see me as their personal problem solver. Therapy has helped me realize that saying no to one request doesn't negate all the good I did for 2 years. I was a damn good mom to Ethan when he needed me. That chapter of our lives is closed, and that's okay. Edit, a few people are asking about legal stuff. Yes, I probably could have pursued guardianship back then, but hindsight is 20/20. I was young, overwhelmed, and my family convinced me it was temporary and that involving courts would somehow hurt everyone. I know better now, but I can't change the past.